All right, welcome to Feedback, episode 11. I'm Adam Sessler, editor-in-chief of games content for G4, here in the fancy G4 radio booth with knobs and dials that I have no idea what they're supposed to mean. But it's not all about the knobs and dials. We're obviously joined by Patrick Klepek,
hello,
Matt Kyle, and Brian Leahy, and we're going to be chatty about games and things that are relevant to games from the past week, maybe the past 2 weeks, maybe the past month, and maybe we're going to prognosticate the future. Who knows? That's why you have to watch this entire show, because we don't know either. We are going to start with news. It has been a slightly slow news week, Patrick, if I'm...
It has been slow. Our news line has been changing on and off as we try to come up with things. But once again, we have another game that looks like it's been officially delayed into 2010, one that we all expected. Alpha Protocol, Sega and Obsidian's off-delayed spy action tactical RPG thinger has... Sega refuses to acknowledge the game has been delayed, but on their website... it's an automatic database, and eventually the game's release date, October 6th, came around, and the website automatically changed it to available now, which forced them to finally acknowledge that the game was not out. And then the website changed to spring 2010, but Sega as a company kind of refuses to talk about it. They still haven't talked about the game's delay, but at this point, well, clearly you can't buy a copy, and the game's coming out spring of next year. So,
yeah, I think the first thing about this is that we all thought that it already had been pushed back, and it had been pushed back officially.
And even like Obsidian posted on their boards, like, we can't say anything. I hope you understand. And it's like, what? Sega's got to be the only major publisher right now where you could actually literally diagnose like psychoses in their behavior. Like it's I don't know what's going on. They're denying that this exists. They refuse to bring Yakuza, but maybe they will. But we won't say no. But we did say no. But now we're not saying no. And like I don't know.
And then all of a sudden, the main character from Shenmue is in their Sonic racing game.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
I mean, it's almost like some girls I dated in high school, where like when like you're going out with them, but you don't know if they believe you're going out, and so you don't know. I mean, that's how a lot of
things
behavior. I mean, Brian, obviously there was the leaked Sega memo that said a lot of things involving motion control and stuff, but it also expressed that Sega themselves were somewhat dismayed with Alpha Protocol.
Yeah, they said it probably wasn't RPG enough. Looking at Mass Effect, and with Mass Effect 2 coming down the line, probably were a little scared the game wasn't up to that quality level. But it's weird that would leak, and they're still going to deny that it was delayed.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds, I don't want to say cover up, because this isn't the Plumbers or the Pentagon Papers or something like that.
It clearly sounds like it was done at the very last second, but it's odd when like one of the ways Obsidian was communicating about what was going on was through their fake Twitter account for the main character of the game, where he was making vague allusions to the fact that the game is being delayed. Like at that point, when that's like there is some sort of corporate weird screw up going on, because to the point where we've gotten to the game's release date and there's still no acknowledgement of what the hell is going on with the game. That's just strikes me as very odd. Maybe there's some sort of power shift going on at Sega that we're unaware of, but clearly someone's not able to call the shots and just communicate a message about their own products, especially when Alpha Protocol is supposed to be like their big fall original IP. Yeah. And if you can't even communicate the release date when you've got a solid, regardless of where the game is development-wise, you have a solid heads up on Dragon Age. Like, especially when Dragon Age's PS3 version isn't coming until the end of November. And regardless of the game's quality, like, you have a solid heads up for the RPG season. And it's just odd that they can't get on the ball about it either coming out now or what's happening to it in the future.
I mean, what does this leave Sega with for the rest of the year?
Nothing really.
I mean, there's Mario and Sonic.
Mario
at the
and
Winter
Sonic,
Olympics.
and is there any other nothing else?
I don't believe there's anything else coming from Sega. I mean, this is just not. It might end up being good for Alpha Protocol, which I had always thought it was supposed to be coming out this week.
But it was supposed to come out in the spring of this year.
That's true.
So I think for the game, it's a good thing, especially because Obsidian's had a lot of false starts in terms of trying to get a new IP out there, or just getting a game out there that isn't sort of bug laden. So I think this is good for the game, but
I don't think it's good for Sega. I mean, this is not. This has been. I mean, Mad World, which I think we all thought was going to do a little bit better than it actually did. I mean, they seem to keep on having good intentions that never seem to manifest themselves into sales.
Well, there's a very weird, like, I don't know what's going on back there, but it's like they showed Alpha Protocol at E3. They had it up and playable. They were willing to talk about it and promote it, and then you never heard anything else about it. And like even before, like the heavy rumors about being delayed came around about a month ago, like I remember we were all sitting around the office, like we were wondering, like, God, are they just sending this game to die, or like it felt there was no promotion, there was no awareness, there was no nothing. When I pre-ordered it at EB Games, they had to like. Or GameStop, they had to like look it up to figure out what it was.
You get
like,
an email
like,
saying, "Are you sure?"
Well, this was in person. I was like, "I want Alpha Protocol." They're like, "You want what?" And I'm like, "Alpha Protocol. It's that Obsidian, Mass Effect."
Give me Brutal
kind of game."
Legend.
We actually, on a side note, Shirley McGarvey, who wasn't in the studio with us, was actually trying to figure out where there might be import copies of Bayonetta made available, and went through the same thing, having to spell out the name of the game. there seems to be a strange blind
Sega
spot when it
can't
comes
even
to
get into
Sega
the
titles.
database correctly.
And-
we have a
and you know
larger
what-
issue.
What is sad is that this also comes on the heels of another disappointment for Obsidian, which was the Alien vs. Predator RPG that they were also working on. So I think that this is a talented group of guys. I have yet to see anything in Alpha Protocol that makes you think it isn't on track to be a solid game.
Yeah. Well, and also you've also got maybe ironically the fan-made patch for KOTOR 2 PC version that actually finishes the game and makes
Yes.
the ending make vague sense. Apparently is pretty much ready to go, or might have already come out by now. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, a beta of it has come out,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's,
Wait, that's
it
been in
is
the
sort
works
of
for
an
what?
ironic twist to all this that someone else spent several years finishing Obsidian's game as Obsidian's new game gets delayed to sometime next
Someone
year.
wrote a sequel to Catcher in the Rye somewhere in Sweden because we all said, well, hey, what's holding up to now? Outside of being drunk and angry. So anyway, best of luck to Obsidian. We also have New Vegas on the way, hopefully next year from them as well. Story number 2, Patrick, new Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah, so one of the things that leaked through a patent way earlier this year was the idea that Nintendo was doing some sort of kind of hold you by the hand hint system. And then at E3, Miyamoto started talking a little more about this. And it's debuting a new Super Mario Brothers Wii, and then Kotaku got hands-on with the game this week and was able to see and play with this new mode that they're calling Super Guide. So essentially the way Super Guide works is that when you play the game single player, if you die 8 times in a row, you get 5 lives to start, so you die through a whole series where you get to continue again, and 3 more lives lost. A green box appears above you, and if you jump in, hit the green box, you turn into Luigi, and at that point, the level begins to be played by an AI-controlled Luigi that goes through the level. And at any time, you can click a button and regain control of Luigi. And one of the things that have been wondering ever since they talked about this system was whether this was meant to be sort of like a tutorial for the level, and that you had to go back and finish the level on your own, or whether, which I thought was the smarter, bolder move, was to, if you do this mode, let that count as completion. Who cares? Like, if you choose to enact in this mode, that's your choice. It's optional. And as it turns out, that's what they're doing. If you turn on Super Guide and you let Luigi go through 99% of the level and then just jump in, you get the accomplishment of finishing the level. But it's up to you whether the green box, it doesn't force you into it. You could run through the level again for the 9th time. But I think it's a really interesting approach for the casual audience.
I'm just glad they're not doing it the way Capcom would do it in a handful of their games, especially Devil May Cry, where after you died, it came up saying you kind of suck. Do you want to drop it down to the easy
Or
mode?
Ninja Gaiden, where it's like the dog mode, like.
Yeah.
Ah.
Well, I do enjoy that it's yet another opportunity for Nintendo to insult Luigi. Like, I don't remember exactly when Luigi became the whipping dog of the Mario franchise, but like it's just once it's like, oh, you kind of suck. Maybe you should play Luigi.
I don't know. I see it the other way, where Luigi knows how to do it perfectly, and you, as Mario, you have no idea.
Yeah,
Luigi's on task here.
He's kind of the Jeeves to the Wooster that is Mario, who's just kind of a bumbling idiot, and he's like, I'm tall and smarter, but I'll stay quiet back here.
But did they say that this is also something they want to incorporate into
The
other releases?
Yeah, the insinuation is that this would be something in all of Nintendo's major games going forward, and that's
What major games? Sorry, I just had to say that.
Well, I'm looking
So
forward to
how's
this in
Super
Wii
Mario
Fit.
Galaxy 2
Yeah.
going to play itself?
Well, maybe
That'll
Wii
be
Fit
fun.
Plus, like, you could do the exercises for you, and I think there's potential there. But I mean, and maybe like in a Zelda game, like you could see, maybe, like if you go into the dungeon, maybe that's how it happens or something. I don't know. I just think it's cool because what I take away from that is that Nintendo can design games that are more difficult, more challenging, and fit better for the hardcore audience, while putting in a mode that allows the casual gamer to sort of do something. I don't know why they couldn't just turn it on by default. I think it seems a little strange maybe that you have to die 8 times. And, like, if you want to just turn it on after the second life, like, I think they could just make that a little bit easier to access, but I'm sure it's open to tweaking. But I think it's really encouraging because they can make difficult games that casuals can opt out of and just move on to the next stage and still feel.
I think, by the time you are watching this, my review of Forza Motorsport 3 will be up. And one of the big new features in that game is, it's been in other games like Grid, is a rewind feature. But the difference here is it's always available, and you can use it an unlimited amount of times in a single player and an offline race. That means there's really no risk of messing up. And they did it because, Forza is an incredibly tough driving game. Casual audiences didn't really go for it. If you miss a turn, you don't have to restart the entire race. You just rewind back to a point and keep on going through. So I think, it's casual features like that allow difficult games to expand to a broader audience.
Now, I'm trying to find the silver lining. Not that this is a bad thing, but one can almost read, as you kind of intimated there, Patrick, that we might be seeing those games we're so yearning for coming out of Nintendo, that maybe that whole hardcore, since they have the broad casual audience, that maybe we do get a Kid Icarus, that maybe we will be seeing more of those games that we're so hungering for, that we typically get from Nintendo, but we're really lacking.
I mean, it could
right
be
now.
a recognition that this is their development and reconciliation for, look, we want to make more of these games too. We have teams that are hungry to make more of these games, but we have to find a way to bridge those audiences, and this is a way to try and bridge those audiences. And I think it's a pretty unique way, and I'd like to see that in more than just Wii games. I would love to see.
If you're gonna have the audience of the Wii plus make a Team Ninja game making a Metroid game, you're gonna need a way to make that game playable to somebody who's never played Ninja Gaiden, or something, or at least if there's like QTE scenes, make them play themselves, something like that. But I can see this as a dry run for like an other M. Easy mode.
We're seeing other, like Bayonetta is doing, we actually just put an interview up on the site with the Bayonetta team talking about their very easy automatic mode, which is essentially where the game is boiled down to what they're calling just movement and action, which is you move around and you smash the B button. And when I was talking to them about it, it's essentially it turns the game into an interactive movie. You don't have to do anything. And you just smashing on a button and crazy cool things are happening on the screen. And it's in real time, so you sort of feel like you're doing it, and you're moving the character, but you don't have to worry about any sort of the button presses. Now, I think that's sort of misguided for that game.
Okay, that's where
you really don't see why they'd want to put in a mode where you can play Bayonetta one-handed?
I don't.
I want to get Bayonetta, but I also want to make sure that my 4-year-old can enjoy it too.
I don't think you're the target audience for this game.
Not that the game's giving much support for the non-fetish angle.
Now, what is this stuff with Nintendo having the easier modes? I mean, what can we read into this that Nintendo really is almost kind of now trapped by this new audience that they so celebrate, but they might be like, where do we go here? I mean, are we seeing some of that strain that Nintendo, its own success is becoming something of a burden for them?
Well, they have this new control scheme. Well, not new now, but it's waggle and maybe a couple button presses. And now when they revisit games that have a more traditional control scheme, you have a whole new generation of gamers that maybe aren't used to D-pad and buttons, and certainly not analog sticks. So they might have to handhold them through it.
Yeah, and I think it's just also I think you might have development teams that were, it's exciting for a first couple of years maybe to work on these different types of games. But at one point, we're 4 years, into the cycle of the Wii. They want to make something different, and maybe that is a return to sort of the traditional games that we like. And maybe if this works, I'm skeptical whether it works, but I think it's a strong step in the right direction for them to reconcile that between what seems to be perhaps a signal that the development staff wants to do things that we want, but it's trying to find a way to make that work with the audience.
And you might be looking at like Monster Hunter Tri, which sold huge amounts of copies in Japan. Uses the classic controller. There's no motion control, and now No More Heroes 2, Suda51 said that No More Heroes 2 is going to work with the classic controller. So maybe you're looking at there's also a more hardcore group moving towards that as well. So it's an interesting shift that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely time will tell, but I think all the celebration of the success of the Wii and how I think most of us felt when it was first announced that kind of the raw truth and confusion is finally coming forth. So let's cross our fingers that Nintendo's moving in the direction that will make us all happy. And while I'm at it, I want a pony for Christmas. All right. Story number 3 about Activision and Modern Warfare.
Yeah, this one is really interesting, and more so just because Infinity Ward is talking about it at all. But so in an interview with the official Xbox magazine over in the UK, there's an interview with Infinity Ward for Modern Warfare 2, and where the development staff was talking about how when they were pitching Modern Warfare, or essentially the concept of Modern Warfare was actually during Call of Duty 2, and they wanted to get rid of the World War II setting, but Activision said, no, there's no statistical data that says this is a good idea. And so what Infinity Ward did was pitch to Activision, okay, well, we want to get into console development. We wanted to do this more modern setting. If you give us console development kits, we'll make Call of Duty 2. So they did that. They got console development kits so they could move forward. So Call of Duty 2, was like the big Xbox 360 launch title. And Activision fought them, every bit along the way, but it seemed like Infinity Ward would just agree to do things so they could finally get around to making the game they wanted, which is Modern Warfare, which turns out to be a massive, massive success. And it just blows your mind to think of what would have happened if, Modern Warfare turned out to be, World at War, or if they just continued down the World War II path.
I think it would have been shocking.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, the multiplayer landscape right now without Call of Duty 4 being the Modern Warfare version. And I mean, this is actually, because I did the review and stuff with Infinity Ward for Call of Duty 4 and all that. I went over to their offices and stuff, and I heard very similar stories to this.
I was about to say, I think you and I were told the same tale.
Yeah, we were. This is. I guess now they're talking about it publicly. I mean, this was originally like around a lunch table with like shh kind of thing, but like now, I guess they're just talking about it. But that's what they wanted to do. Even when I think they said even when they were still working on Allied Assault. When they were, still with Medal of Honor at EA, they were talking about, it'd be cool to do a modern one, and like that's been in their heads for forever since basically like 2000.
I think this could be signaling the start of a Bungie-like situation with Bungie pulling away from Microsoft.
I think
and
they're
Infinity
feeling
Ward
pretty ballsy.
pulling away from Activision. They'll fill out their contract, do as many more games as they have to, and then go from there. I mean, they have the money, they have the audience now. I mean, that audience knows it's Infinity Ward. I mean, when you saw Call of Duty World at War, people knew this wasn't, that team.
Yeah.
You don't often see that with, casual audiences that just maybe follow games. All the confusion over who actually developed Rock Band and who's still on Guitar Hero. I've heard so many times, Rock Band ripped off Guitar Hero, but it's the guys who created that. And I think this is the start of Infinity Ward going their own way, like Bungie.
And they definitely come into their own. I mean, I always tell the story about how when I went to review Call of Duty 2, at lunch they were very like, do you like it? What do you think? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And then when I went to do Call of Duty 4, they're like, yeah, we made an awesome game. Come play. Like, come sit down, check this out. They knew they had made the game that they wanted to make and that they'd always wanted to make. And so I think their confidence, even in the face of Activision, I would say their confidence is pretty warranted. They're definitely they make gold every time.
And it sells well. I think one thing that's very worth noting was that 2 weeks ago, there was the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 event that was showcasing multiplayer. When you arrived at it, it was definitely, one, they're trying to get the attention of the press. There was a lot broader than just the enthusiast press that was there. There was signage for the Xbox 360, for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and for Infinity Ward. Nowhere could you find that Activision logo. And even to the point that when the announcement was made by Microsoft of the special edition Xbox 360, the Modern Warfare 2 one, Microsoft said, our special relationship with Infinity Ward. I felt it was, while very casual and not like they're saying, hey, look at what we just said. I found that as an act of protocol to kind of cut Activision out of that was very telling that, yes, Infinity Ward is a very, very powerful developer, I think, on the level of Bungie. But one thing I think that this is really telling is how much of this World War II games that we all complain about, like, oh, another World War II game, how many other developers are out there that don't want to be doing a World War II game? But there's been so much groupthink among the entire publishing industry that World War II is the only thing that sells.
Well, you gotta wonder,
is that still true, though? I mean, like, we saw Brothers in Arms, didn't make too much of a splash. I mean, Gearbox has said that it did good enough for them. But I think we're hearing rumblings that Medal of Honor is moving towards a modern direction. I think we're essentially about to see the shift that happened with World War II happen to modern combat and takes in the Middle East. And I think 2-3 years from now, we'll probably be having the same bitch fest about modern combat.
We're going to be like, why can't I get the War of 1812? I want a musket.
I can't see in another Brothers in Arms being World War II. Like, where do you go from there?
I think it's going to the future. I think you're going to start having teams like Infinity Ward tackle futuristic combat.
I think that's a for Infinity Ward. I would bet that's coming. I would probably not Brothers in Arms. I don't know. I think Brothers in Arms might.
I think that would
jump
just
to
be
a more modern war.
Yeah,
but I think the way they do their stories in Brothers in Arms is a little more like reverent, and I think it'd be hard to do that in the future.
Actually, and to the point of reverence, thank you for the segue, Matt. So a rather significant trailer premiered on Sunday Night Football for Modern Warfare 2. The big reveal being, okay, at least some elements of the game in the single player, the war has come to American shores. You can see the Washington Monument. It's kind of in trouble. You can see the White
Fallout
House.
3 prequel.
It's a lot more effective than any crap that Roland Emmerich keeps on showing with like DC getting destroyed. I like to think it's the prequel to Fallout 3, but a lot of people are wondering, okay, are they pushing it a little bit too much? You know, that's always kind of a loaded image, and people can be a little bit reactive. Is Infinity Ward stepping into some dangerous waters here?
I don't know about that, but I wrote in a post for the feed that I was really excited when I saw it. I was like, this is some really powerful imagery, and like this sounds like a really interesting setting to play around in. But I was a little disappointed after I got the knowledge of it, because how cool would it have been to play Modern Warfare 2, which you already knew you were going to play, you were already going to beat, and then to just be blasted out of nowhere with the idea that you're going to be fighting on sort of a combat heavy like American soil. Like that would have been such a powerful twist in the narrative. And I'm sure they've got more, but I feel like one of the biggest narrative twists has been spoiled by this trailer, which is a result of the culture that is cultivated. You know, it's sort of, you need something every other week with a new trailer, a new reveal, a new feature. So I'm not surprised it's happened, but after I watched the trailer, I wished I could have gone back. As excited as I am that it's happening, I wish I could have saved that for the game, because I think I know enough about the game that even as like a games journalist, a games writer, I didn't need to know that. And like that would have been so much more powerful in the game itself.
I don't think it's as big a reveal as we think it is. And I base this on two things. First, Infinity Ward's very tight about information about anything. Like they plan this out. Like they know what they want to tell you about ahead of time. And then also going back to Call of Duty 4, the nuclear explosion in that kills your character, your American Marine character. They were very adamant that no one talk about that. They wouldn't tell you about it before you saw it in the game. We made a concession to not record it at all when we did recording for the special episode and the review. And like, so I'm saying that because of that, they have that mentality towards their game and their story. I'm saying that that Washington thing is not the big reveal.
If
it's
they
not
can show
the big, there's
that,
something
then
else.
There's something
in there.
even more like
Right, there's aliens, so we're leading into the sci-fi game.
No, I think the war goes to Greenland. Yeah, and that's why I got
imagery.
goosebumps just saying that.
I think it's
now.
a dream sequence. No, I don't think it's a dream
I
sequence.
was almost wondering, like,
But-
that's the vision of the future if they cannot contain the war there in the Middle East.
But the trailer has also shown a lot of people are saying that Captain Price is back, and the voice actor has said, you know, he reprised his role as Captain Price, but it was expected that he died at the end of 4. Spoilers. But is he really back? Did he survive, or is it a flashback, dream sequence? Who knows what's going on? But I do think that I agree with Matt. That's not the big reveal that's coming.
Now, one of the things I felt, and this goes back to E3 when we saw, you know, that awesome snowmobile in snow level, and then when you see this trailer, is it me or is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 feeling more like an action movie than Call of Duty 4, which, you know, it was taking a lot of liberties and it had a narrative, but it seemed to really want to kind of, you know, really posit itself in this kind of nitty-gritty, realistic treatment to war. I don't know how much, even like, you know, between Pakistan and India, how much combat is actually taking place on snowmobiles in wartime situations.
Well, I feel like they maybe felt the need, and I agree with them, that you need to push it, and you need to push it into this like more realistic, less documentarian territory if you want people to like, you know, stay interested. Because frankly, with all the modern warfare games that are actually out there now, it's like you got to give me something other than a desert or like, you know, your latest attempt at guessing what it looks like in North Korea to like keep me interested. Like, you know, they're bringing you somewhere that these like Tom Clancy style games generally don't go, and I think that's important to keep me interested in playing what is again a sequel to a sequel. You know?
Yeah, it is, and I think it's interesting that the war in Iraq was far more present when Call of Duty 4 came out, but you know we are having a lot of, you know, talks obviously in Washington about whether or not to pull back from Afghanistan, to actually dump more troops in Afghanistan. I mean, if they don't go into action movie territory and they were to do more like Call of Duty 4, I mean, are we just at a level of fatigue that it's just...
I think so. I don't think people are interested in going back to that scenario as much, and I think that's what's probably going to hurt a lot of the games that were greenlit right after Modern Warfare came out, that when those games start trickling out, you know, in the next 2 to 3 years, that where people are going to be fatigued. The games are going to sell because, you know, people like war games. They're going to think that looks like Modern Warfare, but I think we're going to find out that, Infinity Ward is thinking 2 steps ahead of everyone else like they have been in the past, and we're assumingly 8 years ago when they wanted to make this game. And that when we get around to hearing what happens, with their next game or two, that they're going to show a clear understanding of where the shooter genre should be going.
And because, they have the balls to say, well, if this scenario is old now, where do you go? You go to the Nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
I mean, you had 6 Days in Fallujah, that whole thing where Konami picked it up for what seemed like a day, and then the outcry and the press reaction was so negative that it disappeared the next day and hasn't been heard from again. And I wonder how much of that was, people being like, we're kind of tired of this whole realistic, true-to-life, war that is going on. I kind of want a fantasy, whether it be grounded in reality or not. Let's go to something that isn't actually happening.
Which takes us to our game of the week. Thank you, Brian. This is all good. We're like, this is just, I love the interplay here.
We really planned it out.
We're about to talk about fantasy space combat, and that is Halo 3 ODST, which we have chosen to be our game of the week, a point of discussion. I would say the game has been out for a bit. I think that's kind of good because, wow, I mean, Halo just generates reactions. And first, let's get a sense of where you guys felt about the game, but then let's definitely move on to how people have reacted to it, and if Halo just hurts itself by its own size. But Patrick, what did you think of ODST?
So I just recently finished it a couple of days ago, and I really, really enjoyed the game. As someone who is not a big fan of the Halo mythos, and what I love about ODST is that it's very slim, it's direct, it feels like a Halo's take on like Metal Gear style VR missions where you're just playing a bunch of different combat scenarios on a hub world, and it feels like an old school like PC expansion pack. You can tell it was done in a year, and it was very lean. And as someone who got tired of like, I don't want to play as Master Chief anymore. I don't understand what this Gravemind thing is like. But like the Halo world, like the combat, ODST is exactly what I was looking for in a new Halo game.
And Matt,
I am a decent Halo fan, although I'm more a Halo fan because I'm a Marathon fan, which was Bungie's Mac shooter series that some people consider a dry run for Halo, but I consider Halo the watered-down version of Marathon.
Word of warning, you can't get that on Xbox Live. It will induce nausea because it's an old game that does not translate well.
It's a little sickening, but I was not all that thrilled with the ODST campaign to the point of amazingness, but like I really like the missions, the flashback levels, but I thought this open world city was just boring and empty, and I didn't care about exploring it. And I thought the music, while the music itself was good, it also kind of felt like I was about to like see a soap opera scene or something.
It sounded like Takeshi Kitano jazz. I was thought of movies like Sonatine and Fireworks, where there was always supposed to be this kind of like this kind of awesome jazz with this threat of violence everywhere. I don't know if that works in Halo. But yeah, that was I couldn't figure out what I was thinking about.
That was quite the reference.
Yeah, that was.
I was just like, whoosh,
hit Wikipedia, kids.
Agent Cinema, it's good for your brain. I really liked it. I think Firefight is the star of the show. I think the campaign. I would have been fine with just a series of levels. Just the individual missions as levels, because the missions themselves are amazing.
Which I
really
think is
those.
what the game originally. Remember, this really was an expansion by Bungie and Microsoft's own admission when we first heard about it. It then kind of evolved into a game, and I think where I also felt that the overworld of the city really didn't come alive as you would expect it would when you hear about an open world city. That was one of the things that happened later in the game as it was developed as something a little bit more robust.
They've talked about that one of the things that really expanded the game was that all of a sudden New Mombasa kept getting bigger and bigger because they were able to iterate faster than they thought. So it sounded like the hub structure that was a later thing. It sounded like it was more of just a string together small mission narratives, and then all of a sudden they realized, oh no, we can plop you in this world and let you run around. But I'll let Brian come in because we haven't gotten around to it.
I really liked the campaign. I wasn't so big on the open world stuff too. I kind of wanted to get to the more Halo, 30 seconds of action, a little downtime, 30 seconds of action that the sort of flashback missions were. And then I was confused how a broken sniper rifle would allow my character to see an entire flashback, because that was, what they're getting at. All the flashback items started as like, this filmed something, so watch it.
You've never been really lonely, Brian. I think that's the problem.
He's going space crazy. But Firefight, I love, but I'm having a little beef with right now because me and my buddies have been doing some the Vidmaster Endure Challenge run.
Good luck.
And the actual opponent there is keeping the connection alive for the 2 hours it takes to do it, because last night we actually had it die and disconnect us all after we had finished the required 4 waves before the game had decided it was wave 5. So we had done it, but before the game decided we lost the connection and the achievement didn't unlock. So now
there's a weird
recon,
thing
whatever.
with that game and achieve like we went through my friends and I went through on co-op Legendary the other day, which took us 2 hours. By the way, like halfway through, one of our guys was like, "Are we on Legendary?" Like we had to check. Like it was really surprisingly easy. I don't think the stamina versus shield Master Chief thing is nearly as big a difference in gameplay as they tried to make it out to be.
I think it's really, and I found that it took me a while to realize that, when the screen goes red 'cause I'm taking damage, that's not what usually that would indicate in most other games, which is get out of the way now and heal up. I'm like, no, I can play and survive for quite a bit with, a lot of, my vision quite obscured.
But when I was going to say, when we finished it, our achievements for finishing on Legendary didn't pop for at least like 2 minutes. It was like 2 minutes later, we were in a different menu, and it's like, oh, there it is. Okay, we thought we'd just gotten screwed.
One thing, I don't know if it's just because I'm a poor shooter player, and I'm fine with that because it made my experience more enjoyable, but I was dying all the time. I was playing on normal, and I found ODST to be like terrifying to go through the hub world because maybe it's just because I'm bad, but it really played to my advantage because just running around, like the moment... who's the big hulking guys with the giant green guns?
Hunters.
Like, the hunters. Seeing one of those, like I would just spin around and try and find a different way through.
You mean you didn't just circle strafe him, jump around him, and melee him in the back 9
I
times?
have to agree. I'm like Patrick on this one. I found the first time I took on the Hunters to be far more challenging. And I felt in
they
Halo
chase
3
you.
that I was
They
good.
chase you. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
And
they
I
chase
was,
you into buildings, and I
Yes,
thought they wouldn't follow me into a building. They're
and
too
you
big.
spin around and they're there. Like so like again, I could see that it might be my skills as a shooter player, but the way the dynamic worked with the stamina was like perfectly spoke to what I think they were trying to achieve with what they were trying to achieve that maybe didn't come through in your playthrough, but did in mine, where just I'm vulnerable, I need to run away, I can't go into every firefight thinking that I'm just going to destroy things, and it really, I really enjoyed that aspect of the hub world.
I just didn't feel any more vulnerable than I did as Master Chief. I mean, I felt a little stronger in the sense that like I could take the stamina damage, and then I could take a pretty good amount of life damage, whereas in Halo 2 and 3, they got rid of his life. It was like Halo 1, but it was like Halo 2 and 3, you didn't have a life bar, so like you kind of had to guess how much extra shots you could take as Master Chief, whereas in this, I felt like I was just, we were really like playing like balls out, like oh, Hunter, run at him, just go. Like one of us will get around him and hit him in the back. It's cool, And the other funny thing about it was actually we've been playing so much Firefight that early on, like when we were dying, everybody was getting really angry they were dying, and eventually it was like, hey guys, like it doesn't matter. Like you just respawn. Like there's no like we're good. We're okay.
If you want to be really vulnerable playing the game, try doing it naked. That's my one piece of advice. Let's talk about really. I don't play games as well.
Really applies to anything.
Yeah, that's true. So in terms of the reaction to the game, I think there was a big parlor game that we were all kind of engaged in. Is this going to be popular? Will Halo fans like it because it is different from Halo? I don't know if that necessarily happened, but I think what became very clear is that in the years that Halo's become like the poster child for video games, it has brought with it a very large kind of skepticism, which has moved to just people who just seem to really get off on not liking Halo despite what the game may actually be. I mean, am I being too sensitive to this? Or
no, definitely, and it's beginning to exist with Modern Warfare 2 as well. But Halo is too popular to like and be cool. If you're part of the inner niche hardcore section of the hobby, I think. I don't care. I like Halo. I like the music. I like the characters. I think it's cool. I think ODST is a step in the right direction in terms of expanding the universe. And Firefight is awesome, and it feels different from Horde mode in Gears of War 2. So, I mean, there's always going to be people that hate it, but I think I don't think it matters. I think enough people are into Halo that it's a strong enough brand that you can afford to have people that hate you.
Yeah, it's still the best multiplayer experience on a console for me. I mean, well, I played Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer, and you can read my write-up on that. That has a good chance to overtake Halo 3. But right now, Halo 3 is still my favorite, and there's a reason. It's just a well-polished, well-thought-out, well-balanced game that not a lot of games that do multiplayer components come close to. And so, yeah, a lot of people don't like Halo. I think a lot of that goes back to when it was originally a PC game, and then Microsoft bought Bungie, and then it became Xbox exclusive, and all these PC gamers now had to buy
Originally
a
a
hardware.
Mac game.
Yeah, originally it was a
so-
Mac game. It's just, I love the idea, and this is true. I mean, as someone who once worked at Tech TV, and like the weird emails I still get of, I mean, the way that people just cling to this kind of idea of the past, it's borderline fascist in this kind of memorialization of times that we can never recapture again, and slightly demented, I would have to say.
So you're saying that Halo haters just want some Lebensraum? Is that-
Exactly. They just want to have a big painting on their wall of a proud shepherd and his glorious blonde hair and his busty wife next to him, and they're making butter.
I don't know what just happened. I'm just
Firefight's cool.
I'm going to confuse.
But Patrick, I mean, also, as you've watched a lot of these trends happen, I mean, is Halo, can a growing sense of disenfranchisement, at least from the hardcore base because of Halo's popularity, actually cause Halo any damage further down the line? Or is this really a bulletproof franchise?
I think Microsoft's taking a very smart approach with the Modern Warfare 2 box that they've aligned with Infinity Ward and Activision is sort of a signal that, we recognize how massive this franchise is, and then their treatment of ODST, yeah, it's a $60 game, and there you could debate if you aren't into the multiplayer where if the value is worth that, but at the end of the day, they didn't treat the launch like it was Halo 4, and that's one of the things I talked about with Bungie at PAX was that doesn't, you guys seem like you're okay with that it's not this big splashy launch like it was last time around. They're like, yes, because it isn't, and we don't want people to get the impression that that's how we treated this game either. So I think sort of the soft launch of ODST was on purpose, that Microsoft wants to pull away from Halo for a little while. They want to put a Halo game out there, but at the same time, when it's time for the next major Halo, you'll know it's time for the next major Halo, and that there was a soft launch approach to Halo Wars and ODST with the intention of not over-polluting the brand. And I think instead that's been kind of passed off to Modern Warfare and also Microsoft's larger third-party approach so that they can focus on their own stuff. And I think it's a smart move.
Well, all I can say is Brute Force 2. When that happens, you're going to see something
know.
big. We
You'll
are
know.
running out of a little bit of time, so I do want to move on to our reader question of the week. Matt, if you wouldn't mind reading it. It's from our viewer, reader, Gronak. And we're doing it this is more or less how we've decided Gronak must sound were he called Gronak.
All right. In the coming week, Uncharted 2 and Brutal Legend will be released, but I find myself on the fence as to which I should buy first. I will eventually own both, but I don't have time to play two amazing titles at this point. I want to know your opinions on which would keep me entertained longer in my spare time. Note, I'm a huge metal fan, but I love the first Uncharted.
Smiley
That's
face.
exactly, yes, and there's a smiley face at the end. Well, Gronak, Gronak's pointing out that everyone's kind of a little bit perplexed and confused that Uncharted 2 and Brutal Legend are dropping on the same day, which is October 13th.
Also, it's sad.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it's unfair to both games. I don't know which one really kind of rises out of this confusion.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Two good games.
I also, personally, Gronak, I see where you're coming from, but I think you're just kind of screwed because there's stuff in both games that is quite viable. Obviously, I reviewed Uncharted 2 and called it the best single-player game I've ever played, so I may have to tip my hat slightly in that direction, but they're very different animals, and it's very hard to kind of compare them.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to lose one way or the other. I mean, you're going to have to play both of them eventually. Whichever one you play first, I don't think it matters. I mean, I personally would probably go Uncharted 2 because I don't want that spoiled for me. I don't want to know what happens in that story before I play it.
It's a very good point, actually.
Brutal Legend is more about the experience and seeing these characters and kind of exploring the world.
Humor is not going to get spoiled for you.
Yeah.
You play a Schaefer game not for the twists and turns, but for
I mean,
the experience of playing.
a lot of the gags in Brutal Legend, the thing that sells them is not the gag, but Eddie's facial expression after it. So
Right.
you're not going to get that spoiled, but you might get spoiled what happens in Uncharted 2 whenever, but I'm not going to say anything as an example because that would be mean.
I'm gonna say if you're buying both eventually, go Uncharted 2 first, if only because to avoid spoilers, but also because it's got a tried and true multiplayer component that people have been playing, that they have experience with, and that they like. And so, day one, there are going to be people playing multiplayer. Brutal Legends
and there's been a
multiplayer,
beta, so people are already versed in
Brutal Legends multiplayer is very new. It's very different. It might take a bit of time for people to get into it. And frankly, there's a risk that no one will be playing it after the game. So if you want some multiplayer to keep you busy before you can afford the next one, Uncharted.
If there's only a few people playing it, I have a feeling one of them will be Morgan Webb, who is definitely fond of the multiplayer of Brutal Legend. Patrick, how would you help Gronak?
I think it's the same way. Like the spoiler thing, the fact that the Brutal Legend, Brutal Legend, I also don't want to rush through. Like Uncharted, I just feel like
That's a good point.
the way Uncharted 2 is designed that the chapter's done, you're on to the next one. Like it is almost encouraging you to barrel through the game as fast as possible. And Brutal Legend is open world. Like there's side quests, there's collectibles, there's a lot to do. And that's a game that for October, now that games like Alpha Protocol are moved off to beyond, I'm gonna want to enjoy it. I'm gonna want to spread it out over the month. Maybe Brutal Legend will be the equivalent of what Fallout 3 was for me last year, where it's just I'm not gonna rush it. I'm gonna make my way to the end, but I'm in no hurry to rush a Schaefer game. We only get one of those every couple of years, and I want to enjoy it
4
front
years.
to back.
Get Uncharted 2, play through that, get Brutal Legend, take your time, then go back to Uncharted 2 and play it on the higher difficulty.
Yeah, there we
we're
go.
agreed.
Of course, we didn't help Gronak at all. Now that I look at this question again, which will keep me entertained longer. If you want to be entertained for a long time, you better plan on getting both games. I think that really is the answer.
I think
Look
you're
at the great
gonna-
non-answer we gave him.
Well,
Get both.
here's another non-answer. You wait a month and Modern Warfare 2 comes out, and that will be multiplayer online for a year or two.
Yep.
And there you go.
And then you get into 2010 and you've got this question 14 times over in the space of 2 months.
Yeah, it really is, I think, a remarkable time that I personally have never seen anything this curious, where we have a slightly light holiday season and we're about to go into the most ridiculous first 2 quarters ever.
Well, how many games that got pushed because of
Modern
ODST
Warfare.
and then Modern Warfare 2?
Yeah. Modern Warfare 2 is certainly the 800-pound gorilla of gaming, not the Citizen Kane of gaming. But
I feel like it's just
That's
somehow
Metro.
it went like this and it beat them into the hands of games like Splinter Cell Conviction and God of War 3. And there's these small little games that are terrified villagers are where do we go now? I don't know. Oh, the river's rising. I don't know. They'll just go right
There's
Gilgamesh.
plenty of Wii games coming out every week, though. You want
Yeah.
some of those?
yeah, Pet Vets up to 3 installments at this point, I think.
Apparently, Mama still can't cook. That's all I can say that the Wii has taught me this week. All right, guys. This was obviously episode 11 of The Feedback. I would like to thank very much our wonderful guests, Patrick Klepek, Matt Kyle, and Brian Leahy. We're going to be back next week talking about more games. Hopefully something really dramatic will happen in the industry so we can all go, ooh, look, Bobby Kotick has a clown
say
nose.
something.
Or something like
Sega's
that.
got a new COO.
Yeah, maybe.
That's
Who knows?
exciting.
All right, but there's only one way to
came
find out,
Yeah.
and that's to listen to The Feedback, episode 12, which will be hitting you next week. Thanks for listening and watching and loving.